right, so solve and then check. So -5 equals -8 times the quantity, right, of x plus 1. When you say that to one quantity, it means they go together in parentheses. Or we could say -5 equals -8 times the sum, because they're being added, of x and 1. All right, so a couple things we could do. Steps very similar. We could rewrite the equation. Okay, and one thing you could do to rewrite this equation, maybe you don't like that, is you could use the distributive property. You could distribute the -8, so that would be -8 times x, which would give us -8x, and then you could distribute the -8 to the +1, which would change the plus sign to a minus, and so it would be a -8. Okay, so whenever you have a negative and you distribute it, the signs change, right? It was positive and then it went to negative. It was a plus, now it's a minus. Okay, and then you would have -5 on this side equals -8x minus 8, and then you could just solve it like a two-step equation. You add 8 and then divide by -8. But we're not going to do that with this because there's a much easier way. We're going to skip the distributive property. All right, so right? Steps are the same. Locate the side with the variable. We know the variable's on the right side. Okay, there's a left side and a right side. And then we're going to identify what we need to get rid of. Okay, you probably noticed we need to get rid of the -8 and the 1. But it's a little bit different than the two-step equations, right? Because now we have a big parentheses between x and the 1. Okay, so that to get rid of them, we have to do the opposite operations. Okay, and then remember, perform the operation furthest away from the variable, or this really means do the opposite orders of operation. Okay, so remember with orders of operation, we would do parentheses first, PEMDAS. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So in this case, let's do that at the end. Let's get rid of the parentheses at the end. All right, so maybe that's a hint. What's the first thing you're going to do to solve this equation? All right. So a lot of you might have said, well, right, in the two-step equations, I would want to get rid of the +1. If our question was this, -5 equals -8x plus 1, no parentheses, right? We'd want to get rid of the -1 first, okay? But not in this problem. We want to divide, right? We want to get rid of the -8 first, right? Because it's on the outside of the parentheses. Get rid of that. It's being multiplied. The distributive property is multiplication. So -8 times x plus 1. So let's get rid of the -8 by dividing by -8. The 8's cancel, the negatives go away. That means I'm left with -5 divided by -8. All right, so let's write down what we got. We get x plus 1. We can get rid of the parentheses now. And negative divided by negative is positive. So 5 divided by 8 equals 0.625. Now you could have it as a decimal, or we could say, we could keep it actually as 5/8. 5 divided by 8, 5/8, because that is a simplified fraction. Okay, so I'm going to do it either way so you guys can see. What are you going to do next to solve? All right, right now we need to get rid of that +1. Okay, we're going to -1, right? So cancel out. So what we do to one side, we do to the other side. We're going to -1. All right, so that's going to leave us with, on the decimal side here, we're going to have x on the right side, x equals, and then 0.625 minus 1 will give us 0.375. Okay, and now this is a kind of a common fraction, but if we're trying to subtract 1 from 5/8, okay, we're actually going to get, think of -1 as 8/8. Okay, if I get 8/8, that means I'm gonna subtract 5, but I'll have 3 left, so that really means I'm going into the negative. So that would give us, right, well, this is supposed to be negative 0.375, so this will be -3/8 is what x equals. So if the question asks it for a fraction, make sure you write it as a fraction. If the question wants it as a decimal, make sure you write it as a decimal. All right, so pause the video now. See if you can solve this one by yourself, then we'll review. All right, how did you do? Okay, remember you could rewrite the equation by using the distributive property, but I'm not going to use that in this one. It's just a suggestion. Okay, you could distribute the 264, but that would give us a really big number. All right. What's the first thing you did in this problem? Right, we want to get rid of that 264, right? So we don't have to, if we distribute it, 264 times 11, that's going to be too big. Let's get rid of it so we don't have to deal with it. We're going to divide by 264. Okay, they cancel out. What you do to one side, we're going to do to the other side. So 1,980 divided by 264, that's going to give us 7.5 or 7.5 if you want to write it as a fraction, but I'm going to leave it like that. And then I have 11 minus x. What are you going to do next? All right, we want to get rid of the 11, so we're going to subtract 11 from both sides. So I'm going to have x equals, and we've got the 7.5 minus 11, and we're going to get a negative 3.5, or we could, if we wrote it as a mixed number, negative 3 1/2. Okay, so are we good? Does x equal negative 3 1/2? Well, you could double check it, right? That's why it says check, right? You can plug x in, right? Be careful because look at next to this x, there's this minus sign, which makes the x, this has to come down too. We didn't get rid of this yet. So that makes this x negative x. So if negative x equals negative 3.5, positive x must equal the opposite of that. We're going to get rid of the negatives. So instead of negative 3.5, it'll be positive 3.5 or positive 3.5. Okay, when you have a negative there, there's like an invisible 1 next to it. So this is like saying negative 1x. How do we get rid of that? Well, remember we divide. So if we divide, they cancel out, and negative 3.5 divided by negative 1 will be positive 3.5 or 3.5. Okay, so be careful with that. And now, and maybe in the beginning, or maybe even on this step right here, you can kind of rewrite it, right? You're like, oh, I know that's going to be negative x. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm gonna make everything the opposite. So that really what we're doing, we're timesing by negative 1. So that means the 11 becomes a negative 11 plus x. Now x is positive equals negative 7.5. But notice if I solved, I would add 11 to both sides. If I add 11, that means x would equal positive 3.5, which we got. So there is a way where you can kind of clear the x if you want by rewriting it, but it takes a little bit of skill. But I know you guys have.